Ranieri tries one.
His trophy haul might not be there yet, but I think Mikel Arteta's coaching tree is already better than Sir Alex Ferguson's. This is not that kind of gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we're coming to you, Juneteenth. So if, to all the American listeners, happy Juneteenth, really important day in the history of the United States. And for the rest of you, happy June 19th. And, we're coming to you, not much has happened. There's nuggets, obviously. Honestly, if you're looking for it, it's been a bit of an eventful week, but not on the whole concrete acquisition of player standpoint. But we're going to talk about Carlos Cuesta leaving to take over at Parma as the youngest manager in the top European leagues. We're going to talk about the schedule coming out yesterday and kind of what that might mean in terms of what our season looks like. And we'll do some general thoughts in the window, and then we're going to jump into a tier list of the forwards that we have been linked to so far this summer. And with me to do that today, you know him from the Cannon podcast. You love him from Twitter. It is George, who you can follow on Twitter at GeorgeVAFC. George, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, buddy. I'm great. I'm excited to be here, and I'm so excited to talk. I think there's a lot of people that need some therapy in terms of their approach to the window. I think we all need it, no matter where you sit on the coin of super positive, super negative. There's a little bit of therapy that needs to happen, and a little bit of woosah in terms of trying to understand and trying to maybe make sense of the window.
Yeah. What's USA, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, it was like you ever seen Anger Management with Jack Nicholson?
It's been quite some time, but I love that movie.
Incredible. He does one of those things, woosah, to like calm yourself down. But I think basically we're gonna need to have some therapy in terms of just breaking down what's gonna happen, see where everyone's mind is at, and then just trying to make sense of maybe the first place to start for me is like a very illogical 2024, which I definitely want to acknowledge. Like I think there's definitely a certain section of fans that I feel are panicking, no doubt. Like I look at the fan base, and I don't want to be disingenuous as though that there's zero reason to be. And there definitely was something that the club did last year that I feel was beyond illogical. Like the idea that Arsenal didn't recruit a forward in 2024 is something I'm still not able to rationalize, even in my most positive of senses. Like it was on the scale of like, you will never do that. It was you will never do that. It's just not a possibility. Maybe we get a crap forward, but you'll do something, and they did nothing. So I get it. I totally get the pessimism. I think what I'm at is I'm struggling with this because I got burnt by my ex. I hate girls. I hate because I'm struggling with that jump.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with I got given a burnt steak at a restaurant, and I'm going back and they change the cook, and I'm already yelling at the waiter that my steak is burnt without it coming out. I'm struggling with that intent. And so from my perspective, I'm just kind of a guy that is like, let me assess the outcome as it comes. And I think we all know the minimum expectations of the window, and then going on from there, it's about debating what you feel the club can or can't do, but then like let them do it. Like let them execute or not execute. Let's critique and then praise when the time is coming. It makes no sense to critique something when the window has, by the way, just reopened from the Club World Cup on the 19th of June, as you say.
Yeah, I get why Arsenal fans are, not as optimistic this time around, right? The last two windows, you could argue the last three windows were unacceptable, right? Especially, the January window where you had the manager and multiple players crying out for offensive reinforcements. We didn't get any, and I think there is a little bit of truth to saying that we maybe threw away at least the opportunity to make something of this
Definitely.
season. And then last summer, where you sign Mikel Marino. Okay, I think that's been a mixed bag of a signing. You sign Ricardo Calafiori, a lot of potential, but there's injury issues. And then you bring in a cup-tied goalkeeper on loan who's not really that good, and you bring in an over-the-hill Raheem Sterling on loan. The final seconds of the window, and that also kind of shaped what last season ended up being. So I understand people being a little bit worried on that front, but yeah, I mean the whole, to kind of piggyback on that first metaphor, a lot of Arsenal fans are acting like they'll never find love again, and I'm in a mindset of, if they don't want to do their jobs this window, then they don't want to do their jobs this window. But I'm still willing to at least sit there and see what they do. And if we're midway through July and nothing's happened, I'll start getting nervous as well. But I think there's a different guy in charge. Berta's come in instead of Edu, and Edu already kind of had a foot out the door, I think, during the summer transfer window. And then you had Jason Ato, who is just kind of a fill-in during January. So you have another guy running that situation, and Arsenal are in a moment where they have to do it. I mean, look around us, right? City have gone and signed a plethora of players. Liverpool have signed, Verts and Frimpong and Kirkes, and now they're getting linked to Mark Gahey, and people are trying to speak them going after Alexander Isak into existence. I don't think that one will happen, but that's something that people are talking about as well. So, like, if Arsenal don't want to go out there and sign the forwards that we need and sign the midfielders that we need and kind of, make those, bring in those reinforcements to the squad, then we're gonna basically be sitting there, I think, the coming couple of years and just watching these teams, kind of surge past us into another tier.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. Like, if X, Y, and Z happens, and if those things happen, if then Arsenal do nothing, and then if that is the case, then yes, there will be pitchforks. But like
Yeah,
along that
a lot of ifs.
hypothetical, there's a lot of ifs and ands and buts that need to be true in order to lead yourself to like that end scenario, which I think no fan, even if you're most optimistic, are going to say, no, you're wrong in that if and or but scenario. Like, and I do feel that Zubamendi is not being talked about by Arsenal fans, and I don't think that's fair whatsoever. This is a midfielder that has been actively recruited by every major top club in world football, including the so-called Liverpool that people want to throw around for inverts for £100 million for, that was rejected last year, including Madrid, who absolutely tried to derail his arrival at Arsenal this year with Xabi Alonso, which was told no. Who, by the way, Bayern Munich, who absolutely were after in a very serious way previously. So I mean, yes, is it because it's link fatigue? Because it's something that we've associated for over a year at this point, that we've been told that yes, he would be coming in? Partly, but that idea that he was done is not true. I mean, we've seen up-team examples of people changing their minds. Nonetheless, Zubamendi himself last year agreeing to Liverpool and changing his mind to stay. So this idea that it was set in stone that Zubamendi is coming to Arsenal guaranteed, I don't buy. And I think he's going to be pivotal to some major midfield changes, and namely among some of the biggest things we struggle with, including midfield tempo, passing tempo, especially against those physical mid blocks. Like, that is a huge signing. It is a huge signing, and is a huge signing in a starting position in our midfield that changes quite a bit in terms of what we're able to do. And I don't just think it's from deep. I think I've been talking quite a bit on Twitter. I encourage everybody to look at him not just through the passing lens of a Jorginho, but also a Gundogan. This guy can run, he can burst, he can carry, and there's going to be impact in the final third that people aren't expecting. I really think people just think that we've bought this like steroided Jorginho, and they got that in their mind as that's the only thing that he can do. But people forget one of Jorginho's best performances in the year before was his performance at Anfield, in which he played as an 8 and Declan Rice sat as a 6. And that application is something that Zubamendi can do to an incredible level. And I don't think it's going to be a case of him always playing as a deep 6, always being that one player to split the center backs. There's going to be some fluidity. And what I think a lot of people aren't recognizing, this is the first time Arsenal are playing with a true double pivot in 4 years. Like, we have inverted our fullbacks quite consistently. And when you think about it, really don't think Zubimendi and Declan Rice are going to be these consistent, one in, one out kind of players in which we're going to have second striker fiddling. This is a true double pivot in its truest sense of the word. And I think it is a change naturally that when you start talking about the Martin Odegaard impact of it all, I know some people are not sure about what that could mean, but one thing I know is that the current role that you're seeing with Martin Odegaard won't be seen. Zubimendi takes over that middle third control. And so it's going to ask a different thing. Now, whether he succeeds or not, I have my thoughts, but I don't think the role will be the same. And so when I talk with fans, I'm really confused because you've got a sample of a signing that absolutely everybody wanted in terms of world football. In terms of, is he a signing that changes our play style? Absolutely. Is it a signing that also indicates a change in Mikel's philosophy from last year? Absolutely. Like, it's all three things that I think people are demanding, and we're just not giving it credit because we knew about the link since January. That I don't really understand. Look, the forwards, I don't want to ignore it. It's the thing we needed. We started this podcast because I wanted to give it its due credence. We didn't recruit a forward in 2024. It is the priority thing this window that we need to see change. But I, I think we've seen a ton of links, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm just waiting to see what the response is, because I don't doubt that the man that has been screaming in interviews, the man that has even got his players and Declan Rice to ask for attacking help multiple times in January and afterwards, is not looking to recruit a forward. I think, yeah, something drastically has to happen. And I mean, we're probably going to talk about off the pitch changes, but this idea that Andrea Berta has come in and, a new management, a new director is coming into a new job and is not looking to impress and is looking to repeat the failures of the previous management, I find, like, respectfully laughable. I just don't think it'll happen. Whether we do enough or more than rivals, I'm ready to, like, accept and compare. But this idea we will repeat the doing nothing point with, Edu having been kicked out and on the rocks in the same transfer window is not the same thing as recruiting a new sporting director, a highly coveted sporting director, an experienced sporting director that has been in the job since March or April. I just don't. I don't think that those things line up to me.
Yeah. And, I think there's a difference between maybe a cautious approach in the market that I think
Yeah.
Berta might be taking, and just straight up not wanting to do anything. I mean, I think that's the thing that really kind of sticks in my craw when I see how people talk about it online, is just kind of this assumption that, Berta and Arteta and, everyone else kind of involved in the recruitment process are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Like, that's not what's happening. These are really involved negotiations. There's multiple parties that they're talking to. You're not just talking to the clubs, you're talking to the players, you're talking to their entourage, you're talking to agents. You're getting accountants involved to see if you can make the finances work in terms of packages that are being proposed to you. There's a lot of moving parts here, and yes, there are teams that have shown that they can make signings happen quickly, and we probably can do that if we ever needed to. But I think we have our way of doing things, and we haven't really seen what a Berta transfer window looks like yet. I'm seeing people come out and say that Berta's already a failure because we haven't signed forwards on June
No,
19th.
yeah,
And
I'm seeing the same thing.
yeah, and just, I think at the end of the day, there's only so much information that we're going to be working with whenever we talk about this kind of thing, because we're not in the room. But you don't get to this level of the game if you're just going to be sitting at your desk all day playing Bejeweled or whatever. Like, these guys are working and trying to make things happen. It's just a lot of moving pieces.
I think where I'm at is I can't help a hurt person who is no longer going to like any girl say girls are good. Like, if you've ever been in that period, I get it. You just need the supportive friend that, yeah, girls are shit. And by the way, your girl listener, I'm sure you've been into a boy situation in which the same thing has happened. You've been burnt by an ex. You're like, screw boys as a mentality. And I just think there are some people that are so hurt they're in that camp. And um, I just think logically, I don't want to be rude, but like let's talk the reality. Okay.
Yeah.
What Berta has done from the beginning of the transfer window to now. Factually, Gabrielle extension completed. Miles Lewis Kelly extension completed. Talks for Ethan Waneri, Saliba, and Saka at advanced stages, not early stages, but advanced stages for those things. I won't credit them because they're not done, but factually, Miles and Gabrielle done. Hired a new head of scouting who is world renowned, responsible for absolutely changing Juventus's entire model, selling massive amounts of people, including Yildiz, Ricci, Ravella, um, tons into Dean Huijsen. Everybody that Juventus had got has come from this guy, Tognosi, who is absolutely one of the world's best, if not the world's best head scout in a department, by the way, that Arsenal have struggled with youth recruitment and scouting massively. That is one of the biggest areas of weaknesses that the background staff has had in competing for those talents. So we've gone and got one of the best operators that he's secured, by the way, to replace Ado, somebody that wasn't his man, with one of his men. So that was another thing. Now we've also got two signings confirmed, whether you want to believe it or not, in Zubamendi and Kappa. Those are done. Those are pending applications for their medicals and announcements. And we've got major links, whether you like it or not. Berta is very different to Edu. We've got plethora of links, in which now I would like to just break down simply all the links that we've had, which to me scream more 3 forwards than 2, with everybody
Yep.
fearful of the 2. The one thing that I'm seeing is I'm like, I don't agree with any of what you guys are saying, because I have seen links to Wemwell, Sane, Bakayoko. I have seen links to Noni Madueke today. I have seen links now to Kudus as well that we're talking to. Guys, these are all left-footed attackers from the right side, and I'm thinking to myself, I have fully seen the Nico Williams links. I have seen the Leao links. I've seen the Rodrigo links. I've seen tons of left winger links. We know them. We know the big striker links. Why the hell am I seeing 5? Oh, I forgot one. Karetsis, the Greek kid.
Yeah.
Another right wing. Mate, if you deep it, there have been 7 strong links to left-footed, right-sided attackers. They weren't coming from gossip channels. That to me is screaming, we're looking for 3. Now, whether we accomplish it or we don't, I'm only here to judge an outcome at that point. But the intent and the work that's being done in terms of the talks is undoubtedly active. Undoubtedly active. And I think that the striker chase is one of those that's coming to a conclusion personally. Like, it's been settled on the 2, and it's between the 2. And I do feel that by the end of the month, at the beginning of July, we'll see a breakthrough in that regard. Now, what we do beyond, I'm not too sure. We can debate about what we may need. But mate, the one thing that I don't see is them twiddling their thumbs. I see, if anything, overactivity. And we can
Yep.
critique the 2 approaches, but like Edu very much seemed like one target, one pursuit. One in, one out.
Yeah.
That seemed to be his remit. Now, there's pros and cons to that. That could mean like you're so confident in your one choice that that's your darling, that's your girl, it's your one love, and that's sweet. But then if it doesn't work, you end up with Neto, who's cup tied.
Yeah.
And then you've got Berta, who's playing the field. That guy's at a bar and has saying, I'll have a little bit of that. I like blonde, I like red, I like brunette. And, he may end up with the drunk girl at the bar that you have to take care of at the end of the night. That is a possibility. It's a possible con. I'm willing to admit that. But I just think they're 2 very different approaches. We need to adapt to the type of sporting directors that we've got. And I don't think we've got a high school sweetheart. We've got a player.
Yeah. Yeah. Edu was the nice boy that you'd want to introduce to your parents, and Berta's a bit of a horn dog. He's he's out there chasing as much tail as he can. Man, I feel like we could do a whole pod on Berta if we wanted to, but I do. Let's go ahead and touch on Cuesta real quick, just because I do think that is quietly some very significant news, right? Because you're talking about a guy who, in addition to Albert Stuyvenberg, I think those 2 guys were Arteta's right and left hand men, and Cuesta. I always felt Cuesta played the good cop to Arteta's bad cop, and that's not to say that Arteta was not a warm and welcoming presence for players. Like you've seen enough players come out and wax poetic about how great a guy he is, and you see how they run through walls for him on the pitch, right? But I think Arteta is almost infamous for being like an all business sort of guy, right? He's not a glad hander. He's a guy who rolls in and he's gonna train you within an inch of your life, right? He's gonna get in there and he's gonna work you on the pitch, work you on the training ground, and really is just like an intense personality, very demanding. I always felt Carlos Cuesta was that guy who just provided a little bit of like the nurturing environment when players needed
Mhm.
that. Was maybe the guy who would motivate players when they're feeling down on themselves, right? I mean, the most prime example of this is from that episode of All or Nothing, where Quest is in a room with Ben White telling him what an elite player he is, right, and how good he is. Um, but what sort of effect do you think Cuesta leaving is going to have on us? Um, and I mean, who do you see as potentially coming in as a replacement for him?
I don't know. I mean, it's difficult for me because I feel like as far as there was that rumor to Gabriel Hines that was back
Yeah,
in April that he was in, London, and there was. I do think Cuesta had given Mikel plenty of heads up. By the way, I don't think this was something the club didn't know. Maybe we as fans found it as a big surprise. But I'll be honest, I looked at Carlos Cuesta as being on borrowed time, mate. That guy, you could see it from the documentary. He was a coach,
yeah,
and he's going to be an important loss. I'm not going to downplay it. For me, he struck the perfect balance between being able to relate intricate like tactical concepts while still being able to be emotionally intelligent. Like Mikel does strike me absolutely as he's incredibly emotionally intelligent. Don't get me wrong, but he's a disciplinarian and he's the principal.
yeah,
He is. You're never going to be
exactly.
best friends with the principal. And this struck me as the TA leaving. And the TA is a lot nicer. He's going to help you out, like on issues that you've got. And I I think that his ability to communicate with players was clear to see. Um, I also think it just his intelligence, by the way, um, is clear to see. Like his ability to really pick out what you need to focus on as a player. Like that's a huge part of coaching, just in general. Like there can be information overload, translating your ideas. Look at Unai Emery. Communication is key in coaching. It doesn't mean you're a bad coach. It doesn't mean that Unai Emery doesn't know what he's talking about. That guy's brilliant. But like in terms of communication to a squad, if you're unable to translate what you're saying, connect, you're not going to see the outcome. And so I definitely don't want to downplay it. I think it's huge. On the other hand, I'm excited to see what Mikel does. I mean, I did feel that going into another season without a coaching change was interesting. Like some of the best always do it. And I will say, I'm very jealous of Manchester City's acquiring of Pep Linders, who I thought Mikel had vocally wanted as his number two. And I can't lie, that to me could change things. Like he's that good of a number two
Yeah.
that could have really been significant. Like I'm jealous of a lot of signings that I've seen so far. This is going to be so nerdy. I am most jealous of Manchester City's acquisition of Pep Linders. I think that could really improve Manchester City's press. And from a team for ourselves who already thrived in the press, I think that could have been an unstoppable force. And he somehow managed to get him off a really poor coaching appointment, like capitalize on maybe not the best individual coaching performance Pep Linders had. And I think, and I don't know what we do, mate, to be honest with you. Like, I heard the links to Gabriel Hines, but I'm not going to pretend to be in the know about, like, big number two coaches that are definitely on the move and capable and free. So I don't know what we do, but I'm interested to see who we get and then trying to break down what that profile looks like. I do think it can't be another disciplinarian. And I hope, although Hines is, by the way, like, it's really odd. Hines is a disciplinarian. Like, the rumor with Hines and who he is, he's a very intense man. Um,
Mhm.
I just think with the coaching staff, Stuyvenberg gives me very robotic vibes that I think the players all respect, but they're not friends with. Mikel, like I said, is like this principal. I think Nicholas Jover is very much a specialist and very
Yeah.
much a meticulous person. I look at that coaching staff and Miguel Molina, another one who just brilliant kind of mind in terms of if you've heard some of his, this is so nerdy. If you heard any of his seminars, you can clearly tell this is a guy that's so intelligent, Molina, in terms of analyzing tactical opponents, but doesn't give me the warmth. Like I looked at Cuesta and thought, wow, what a Steve Round upgrade in general. Where Steve Round was somebody that I felt could give you the emotional side and another aspect of the game, but I don't think he was on the tactical level of Cuesta at all. And so for me, replacing that emotional connection within the coaching group is something that I'm interested in for sure.
Sorry. A flurry of police cars went by, so I just wanted to mute it there. But yeah, I think that description of Stuyvenberg is really good because if Arteta is the principal and Cuesta is the approachable TA, I think Stuyvenberg was more of a teacher kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm also not going to pretend, excuse me, that I'm an expert on assistant coaches, but
Yeah.
there are some interesting names flying around. Heinze, right, is one that we've been linked to. People have mentioned Jack Wilshere. Santi Cazorla is one that
Okay,
I'm
I've
sure
got
will
a
be a
very
fan favorite.
controversial opinion. I've got a
Yeah,
very controversial opinion. I'm not sure I'm a fan of this recruit the old boys. Um, Very controversial. I think Jack, they all fit the emotional connection point. But I
yeah,
think a lot of people are going to be surprised for me to hear that. I think that it is going underrated the intelligence that Cuesta brought to a lot of this tactical analysis
yeah,
and an ability to change Mikel's mind. Stuyvenberg chats to Mikel as though Mikel is God. They're on the same page. I looked at Cuesta as being somebody that Mikel respected, that if there was something different, he could talk to. I think Jack comes in and the players relate. I think Santi comes in, the players relate. The players love them. Do I have an ability to have a coach on the staff that can challenge Mikel's idea in the moment? I don't know. Like Stuyvenberg just really strikes me like they're completely on the same page. They're just like their boyfriend girlfriend in terms of just exactly what they know how to do. Stuyvenberg's going out. He's trying to implement everything that Mikel wants. I don't think Stuyvenberg is challenging Mikel. Like they're both on the same hymn sheet. I do feel, and I don't have anything to back this up, by the way. It's just the way
mhm,
that like Cuesta was able to so clearly define the weaknesses in Ben White's game to me. Just thought, wow, Jesus, you're a serious coach. And yes, you're relatable. Yes, you had it with a soft tone, but you're smart as hell. And I'm thinking to myself, if something's going wrong in the middle of the season, we're approaching the mid block. Okay, the Dutch way is the slow U-shaped patch. The Dutch thing is break it down by possession. I want somebody to walk in and do a Pep Linders and say, no, go vertical. You need to go vertical because of X, Y, and Z. And I just don't know if a Jack Wilshere and a Santi are those confrontational characters. I think they're not. Like I think they're more of the quiet type that may say to Mikel after the game, "Hey, I think this and this will work," or
yeah.
put an arm around the shoulders. If you've ever seen Remember the Titans, we're all about analogies in movies today, but there is a movie called Remember the Titans in which um, Denzel Washington is this disciplinarian coach, and oh god, I forget his like real name, but there is another white actor who's really famous, who's more of a country guy, who's more of the soft dad approach to these
Was
two
it
things.
Woody Harrelson maybe or
It
someone
wasn't
else?
Woody Harrelson.
Yeah,
It wasn't Woody Harrelson, but he was like this father like figure, And one
yeah,
of the through lines of the movie, I'm not going to synopsize the whole thing, is literally the disciplinarian's really hard on this one player. He says, "Come play for me on the defensive line side," and he excels. The season goes off, and they do brilliantly. The thing is, he goes and he chats to him behind closed doors, and like that approach works. However, you need to have somebody that could see that that player that you disciplined could be used in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's not just saying an arm around the shoulder was all you needed. I needed to see you and your aggression used in a different way. And that coaching intelligence is what I think I'm after in um, as key, to be honest with you. I would like a challenger to Mikel on the pitch. I got one off the pitch in Berta. I would love one in the coaching staff that definitely like aligns with him, but then also has the personality to front. Like I love the idea of Hines because that's a hothead. So maybe I don't know if I love the emotional part that we're missing with Cuesta, but I know that guy will be strong in his opinions, and he's also pretty much he came from the whole counter-attacking mold. So I just like that. I like the idea that he was a little bit in the Pep Linders mold of somebody
Yeah.
that was really high on pressing, really intense on counterattacks, who would go a bit more vertical. And Stuyvenberg was your classic Dutch possession type of football. And together, that's a good myriad of opinions to have the chaos and the control. And you've got your lieutenants that can argue each. But I don't know if I see Santi and Jack as being able to do that. And that may be controversial.
No, I think that's really fair. I mean, I think Jack Wilshere isn't a really experienced coach on top of that to begin. I mean, obviously, like he's coached a couple youth teams, and now, I think he's at Norwich, right?
Norwich.
Um, and then Santi Cazorla is still playing. I'm pretty sure he's been doing like his coaching badges in the background, but these aren't guys. And I know I'm talking about a replacement for 29-year-old Carlos Cuesta, but these aren't guys I think who have the stature to come in
No,
and
no.
and challenge Arteta from the get go, right? So it'll be really interesting to see what we do. Um, I've seen people even suggest Thierry Henry, and I'm just gonna, if you want a controversial opinion, that would be a train wreck of an appointment. Just because you have a guy who's going to challenge Mikel, all right, but also you have a guy who's going to draw the attention. So I don't think that's a good idea, like a lot of people have been suggesting. Before we jump into the tier list, real quick, just the schedule came out for the coming Premier League season. In the first 6 games, if we're starting with United away on opening day. We have to go to Anfield. We have City at home, and I think we have Newcastle.
Away.
Is it home or away? Oh, so we're going to St. James's Park. Okay. So Old Trafford, Anfield, City at home, St. James's Park, all in the first 6 weeks. Very difficult
Let me
start.
double check that for you, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's away. Let me double check that because if people are listening, they're going to be like, "No, it isn't." No, it is away. It is away. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so what we've got is Man United away, Leeds at home, Liverpool away,
Yeah.
Forest at home, City at home, and St James Park away. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So those are 3 of our
easy.
hardest away games of the season in the first month and a half. So, a lot of people are already I
Throwing in
don't
the
know.
towel.
Yeah, people are concerned, right? But do you think this might actually be an opportunity in disguise?
Hundred
Because I
percent.
mean, the way I see it, right? You're getting these games out of the way early, and sure, City are going to have some game time under their belt by the time we get into August, or I think actually we're playing them in September. Either way, right? By the time we play them early in the season, they will have gone through the Club World Cup, probably something of a preseason in addition to that. So they might be a little bit more warmed up than the rest of us, but I think we're going to get Liverpool a little cold. We're going to get United before they've really, congealed around Amarim with those new signings that they're probably going to get. And, same deal for Newcastle, although it'll be a little further along into the season. So do you think actually playing those really hard fixtures first thing in the season could actually serve as a benefit for us?
Completely. I did not understand. I yelled with joy. Yelled with joy. The, if you admit that they're the toughest um, fixtures, none of that's going to change, correct? Like if you're talking about St. James Park and Manchester City away, um, even Old Trafford, as much as we feel that there's a difference there, we historically don't do well. at that ground. If you're talking about them being very difficult fixtures, regardless, if I gave you a blank slate, where do I want them? I want them at the beginning, in which everybody's cold. That's the
Yeah.
best chance. Well, I don't want them during Christmas in that busy period. I don't want them in the run-in. I certainly don't want them between international breaks in March when everybody's warm and we're debating between Champions League games. Give me an alternate. Like from my perspective, you face the best teams cold. That is undoubtedly the best situation in terms of trying to gain an advantage. And when you're talking about the Club World Cup, mate, I think it's going to have a detriment. Look at what Declan Rice was able to do this season and how late he came back in terms of being the Declan Rice that we know. Regardless, these are guys. Ironically, they may need the games because they've recruited a new midfield, Manchester City, entirely. And, they've had Rodri out for a year. They have Rangers and they have, Shirky. They recruited an entire new midfield. So maybe they need the games of chemistry, but I think that we're a team that's very settled. People are downplaying that and using it as a stick to beat us with, in fact. But really, it's going to be quite different. This Liverpool team are very, very new. Kirk has Frimpong, Verts, not small changes. No Trent. That's big, big change. City, Rodri, as I said, Shirky, Rangers, Rain Nuri, wanting Livermento. That's change. That is big change. People are saying, oh my God, I'm fearful because look at the moves they're making. I'm sitting there saying, look at the chemistry that's going to have. As soon as you recruit more than 4 or 5 players, starters, by the way, guys, starters to that front line, you're telling me it's going to just suddenly work with the snap of a finger? No, it's going to take some time. And so the fact that we're facing these guys, our title rivals first, is amazing. And the one point that I want to make, even if it goes poorly, by the way, they're still tough pictures. I'm not looking at banking on winning them. Like, if I do, great. But I look at it and say, okay, if we have them at the beginning of the season, it's completely recoverable in the worst case scenario. And then I look at it in another way. Look at our top 6 record. So in any way that I look at it, and I'm not trying to just find the positive, I genuinely don't see an issue in any form. Like, I would want all the difficult fixtures in the beginning so I can catch teams off guard. Arsenal are factually one of the best top 6 record teams in the league. So do I fear top 6 matchups as much as everyone else when I have the best record? No. And then lastly, do I really feel like these top title rival teams are not experiencing massive change? And yeah, United, forgot to talk about them, but they're having change themselves in terms of like trying to recruit tons of different people. We're talking about Mbeumo potentially, Cunha, all these different players that they're looking to recruit. Emi Martinez, like we're talking 3 to 4 minimum starting level changes, and that's not going to be a team that's going to be firing off from the very beginning. So yeah, mate, from my perspective, bring on the tough games.
Yeah. And, just last point on this, having your hardest fixtures at the beginning of the season means you don't have them at the end of the season. And if you look at that run in, right, April and May,
Beautiful.
I don't want to say it's easy because there's no easy games in the Premier League, but pretty straightforward, and hopefully we will be contending with the latter stages of the Champions League at that point as well. So to not have to play Liverpool away and Newcastle away and City at home at that point in time, I think it can only be a positive. But we are going to jump into the tier list now. So hopefully this does not fail miserably on me. There we go. Can you see it now?
I see it.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. All right. Apologies if that was a bit of an abrupt cut. Some technical difficulties. But okay, so we have the tier list here, right? And along the bottom of the screen, you're going to see several, I think it's almost 15 of the attacking options that we've been linked to this this summer. So I'm going to start us off with a bit of a calibrator. We've got Alexander Isak here. George, where would you put him?
S. I'm assuming S is the best. Yeah.
Probably, Okay, that's the easy one. Why don't we start with the one that we've been linked to the most, which is Rodrigo, and which tier do you think Rodrigo belongs in? And this is
Okay.
just based on how good you think they are in terms of skill level and what the fit would look like and stuff like that.
Um, I'm going to define this so people don't get mad. I think
Sure.
A belongs with people that, when platformed, can be incredible.
Hmm.
Um, so I think I'm going to put him in an A. I don't believe that Rodrigo, on his own, he needs signings around him to really make him pop, in my opinion. And I think when used correctly, he can pop. But if you're going to ask him to do like the same role that we've asked Martinelli to do, he'll do it better, but you won't see the Rodrigo that you buy for £80 million. So it is contingent on some things changing, but can provide a superstar impact. Whereas I feel like Isaac, for example, he walks in any system and is completely world class, and so that's why that's an S tier for me.
Yeah. What specifically? What changes or signings would you make to platform a Rodrigo?
Yeah, we need somebody with a little bit more dynamic width. Like this is a guy that needs to be on the inside. This is a
Mhm.
guy that thrives on his combination on the inside. He can start wide, but he wants to come inside every single time. And his combination play on the inside is phenomenal. His ball striking on the inside is phenomenal. One player that you've got in your list in Julian Alvarez is actually a lot more similar to Rodrigo than people think in terms of profile. People look at Julian Alvarez and they see a clear second striker. You should look at Rodrigo and see more of a second striker than you do a winger. And in order to platform that, you need to have somebody more willing to be on the outside to get him inside a little bit more often. Not too dissimilar to some of the shouts that we would have wanted from Martinelli, by the way, in terms of some of the changes to the system. But Rodrigo, I think, needs to do it even more than some of the others. And uh, so yeah, he I think would be able to provide superstar output, but we definitely would need to make him play in the zones that he thrives in.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Julian Alvarez, where would you put him? I thought that was a very interesting link. Definitely a little bit out of left field. But I mean that makes a lot of sense the way that you've described him. I mean, I guess would his starting position be at left wing, or is Alvarez maybe someone who comes in at center
It
forward and we just kind of play a little differently and maybe have Havertz at left 8 or something?
definitely that one, but again, I put him in A. He has the talent to really pop, no doubt. But you have to build a system around him. And I mean, I actually think he would have huge change, a lot more change than Rodrigo. You'd really have to flip things. This is more of a false nine. This is your Florian Wirtz counterpart, quite a bit actually, like a little pocket player that's got phenomenal output potential, but needs to work off a big presence, a big reference, and needs to be played central quite a bit. He's very much an upgraded Trossard in his ideal form, but can't really play out on the left as much in terms of being in isolation. He's much more of a close combo, zone 14 kind of finisher. Um, and he is brilliant. Like he'll get brilliant output and phenomenal ball striking ability,
Mhm.
but very much a little large type. And yeah, you'll need to change quite a bit. And that's why I'd actually have him second to Rodrigo. Like I like that order because you change more with Alvarez. You need more change with Alvarez, I think. But they're the same idea. You still need to change to get the world class output.
Yeah. Um, we'll go to one of the two guys that has been talked about just to a nauseating extent at this point.
Yeah,
Um, quite honestly, I'm hitting the point with this little saga where I'm just tuning out until I hear something from like Ornstein or Mokbel or someone like that. But we'll start with Benjamin Sheshko. So out of these tiers, where do you think he belongs and why? I think this will be an interesting one.
B. I'm gonna be fair. The
Yeah.
current Benjamin Sesko needs a lot of work. Just gonna be upfront. I have called him, by the way, my favorite prospect in the world. So I hope people can understand I love the player. Will become an S tier talent, in my opinion. But the current Benjamin Sesko right now is 6'5" and doesn't know it. Um, and he'll need some work to do. He will. This isn't a guy that's going to walk in and be world class in the system. It's a guy that's going to be learning his trade, able to contribute, will provide valid output and change for us. But he's not going to do it to a superstar level now. He may do it in 18 months. And he will become an S tier talent, in my opinion. That's how high I believe in the talent. But I just have to be fair. He factually, for me, is a B. a B tier talent because he has work to do and he won't walk in and be world class even if platformed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think unfortunately, the it the center forward conversation is a trickier choice than maybe people had hoped it would be this summer, right? Especially with Isak. I'm pretty confident off the table, right? But with Shesko, like you said, you're talking about a guy who has the potential to be the best striker in the world in a few years, and he's got freakish athleticism. I mean, the ball fires off his foot like a cannon most of the time. Um, I like a lot of the raw ability that I see from him, but I mean, you're absolutely right. Where he gets I think Curran also said something similar to you when we had him on the pod a couple weeks ago, where I mean it was along the lines of he's 6'5" and he doesn't know it. He has trouble holding up sometimes. I like his link up play, but it could be better. Um, and the guy
The
can
center
pass
of
the ball. I
gravity,
think.
man.
Hmm?
It's the center of gravity. He's just
Yeah,
he hasn't understood his body about how to use it quite yet, and he doesn't throw his body around. He's not able to stabilize himself, so he can definitely be a little bit bullied despite being 6'5". But I mean, he does walk in and he solves quite a bit. Like his aerial ability and his box dominance immediately are striking features. He'll score goals and he'll do it well. I just think like if you're looking for him, he's not arrived. He's not the Benjamin Sesko yet. And I mean, if you're okay with that, I just want to be upfront and honest about it. Like I look at A should be reserved for people that if you platform are world class.
yeah.
And I think that even if you platform Benjamin Sesko, he cannot be world class right now. I think he will be, and I will put him in an S tier in like 18 months. Like I'm confident of that. But right now, he's the best B tier. He's probably the closest one that I'd put in A.
So now we come to the other striker that we seem to be debating between this guy and Sheshko, and that is Victor Gyökeres, number 9 for Sporting Lisbon. So where would you put him?
I really don't like him. Mate. I really, really don't like him. Um, I have tried to be very fair here. Um, okay, I,
Look, George, you're in great
I
company. I'm not the biggest fan of Gyökeres, so if you want to start critiquing him, I'll jump right in with you.
there are so many things to critique, and I
Yeah.
think that he, he's done great to get the goals that he's got, but I just don't think that people have watched him enough to get excited about him. You know what? I'm going to back my chat. Put him in D. I really think it's
Ooh.
that much of an issue. His translation to the Premier League, I see completely off. Completely. I think he really struggles, and I think he's just not at our level. I think that he walks in and there's one thing that he does that he'll have good for us, and that's getting shots off of transitions. He'll get shots off, but that's it. And I think that the amount of investment that you need to make in order to make this happen, he's not the game changer that people think. And I think that he's done brilliantly to score the goals. You can't take it away from him. But even the way that he scores goals, mate, like the time he takes to release a shot, the um, how horrible he's in the air, utterly diabolical he is in
4
the
of
air.
his last 96 goals have been scored with his head, and none came in the past season.
No, and like the way he approaches, like, okay, it's kind of lazy to just say he scores transition goals, but look at the way that he creates space against low blocks. He can't, and he doesn't, and he's quite static in his movement. He's really a mover in open spaces, and yeah, he's just a complete wrong fit. I will back my chat amongst these groups. I'm trying to be fair. I believe in a lot of them more than Gyökeres. I think as a talent level, you can make a case that every single one of these players has more talent, arguably, than Gyökeres, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just another point on him. You touched on this before. Just the level he's coming from. It's such a big jump. I think it was Opta came out a couple days ago and basically said that, according to the, their stats and the numbers that they've ran on this, the Portuguese league, the majority of teams in that league are League Two level, right? And we just saw Inter Miami beat Porto today, 2-0. This is it's a massive jump up to the Premier League where you're playing many of the best teams in Europe, right? Even the mid-table teams, as we've witnessed in the past season, can stroll their way through the Europa League. So it's too big of a jump for him. I think he's not going to have the space that he's accustomed to, and that guy that you're watching in highlight reels on Twitter, that's not the guy that you're going to get if he comes to Arsenal, and I'm really concerned if we do end up signing him. But the issue with heading, I think, makes me optimistic because I feel like that's just a non-negotiable for Arteta, where you have to be good in the air. But we'll see. Anyway, I'll cheer you up with a player that I know
Boy.
you love deeply, which is Mr. Bradley Barcola
Yeah.
from PSG.
Okay, I'm gonna be fair. He does belong in A, but put him first. This is the guy
Okay.
that I think is the closest to world class. I'm going to be fair. He is raw. The rawness is, by the way, 38 goals and assists in 56 games. I think what people don't realize, I don't know if you knew that, but like every time I quote that, people are like, wait, what the hell? Really? It's that much output? Yeah, it is. So for as much as people complain that he misses chances, that's the output that is his baseline. This is the clearest form of a superstar. If George Voutis was sporting director right now, I'd be going asking the damn question tomorrow, and I'd be putting 89 million pounds on it. He is somebody that I think you build your team around. That's how highly I rate the talent. And make them question things. 89 million pounds, 250 grand a week. That's the kind of package I'm putting on the table to tempt you with. I can't say much more than I think he's the most complete wing prospect in the world. He can be absolutely anything that he wants to be. He solves everything for us in terms of transition efficiency. He solves everything in terms of speed. He walks in the current role and is the best symmetrical talent. Not Nico Williams, by the way. I think Barcola does it better in terms of even in isolation. Because I think Nico Williams needs a little bit more time. He's more raw. Barcola is not as raw as Nico Williams. And yeah, mate, like I love this talent. I love this talent. I could give you a whole pod about why I think Barcola is ready to make the next step and why I think PSG were really wrong to put their eggs in the Kvaratskhelia basket over Barcola for me, especially when they had Doué. I love Bradley Barcola. Whoever gets him, he's the next superstar, in my opinion.
Do you think he's gettable this summer? Because a lot of people seem to kind of poo-poo this idea
Hey,
that PSG would let him go because he's not a starting option right now.
mate, these are all ego talents. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
he loved the idea about not starting the final. In their most important games of the season, they told him that he wasn't important, despite his start to the season in which he was PSG's most important player up until November, December. And then when they got Kvaratskhelia, you knew what was going to happen, and it happened. And I mean, they did well. I mean, they sat there, and you can't say that PSG didn't do well in terms of what they achieved this season. But uh, you know what I'm tired of, mate? I'm tired of us having this conversation. Are they available? Like,
Mm.
excuse me? If you want to be Arsenal that win trophies, then steal somebody that isn't looking to leave. Make it enticing. And there is valid fact. This is a guy that is 22 years old, ready to explode, and has clearly been bought out of his position. And PSG, by the way, they have a very fluid attack, no doubt. But if you're Bradley Barcola, you are too good to be on the bench, and you are too good to be coming on to impact games. You are a starter. This is like asking Michael Elise to stay at Palace. Um, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. This is a starter, and does he realize it now? Does he need another year of being angry about it? I don't know, but what I do know is if I'm Arsenal Football Club and I'm offering you a starting position in this top team, by the way, with William Saliba, and it's trying to say, look at the French heritage here, get the number 14 shirt, slap on 250K a week. and 89 million pounds to PSG, or even 75 million pounds to PSG, they're saying thank you, and they're saying it's pretty good to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's going. I suspect, I really doubt that he's not doubting it. I don't think he's actively saying I want to leave PSG, but he's saying I'm not happy with the way the season ended. And if you give him
Yeah.
a good project and offer, I think he goes, this might be
And
good for me.
on the other side of that, it's not PSG has cornered the market in terms of the best French talent, right? And generally,
Sure.
they can afford whoever they want most of the time. So losing Barkla, I don't think is it's not losing Kvaratskhelia or losing Dembele to them. I think that's like they'll try to hold on to him and do their due diligence with that, but I don't think this is a guy who they view as critical, right? Like this isn't their Saka who, if someone tried to sign Saka from us, we'd hold on to him tooth and nail, right? So, yeah,
It
I think
strikes me with
if you
Alexis, like when we got Alexis, you know what I mean? Like he still was important, Alexis at Barca. It wasn't like he wasn't important, but
yeah,
he did push the lead. So the only difference is we knew that he was pushing the lead, and then we pounced. I want to stop doing that. Why do I have to wait for you to tell the if we want to be the team that we claim to be, then we've got to ask those questions. And look, if he's not available, then he's not available. Move on to the next target. And I can accept it. He didn't want to leave. You tried, and you put your hat in the ring. Fine, but at least freaking ask, man. Like at least give some doubt. Like this is the type of talent. Let me put it to you this way, mate. This is the best way I can put it. Barcola is part of your transfer window. Are you doubting whether or not that's an X factor forward? Do you have to squint to see the talent there? No.
absolutely not.
Every single Arsenal fan, if I took a poll, 10 out of 10, regardless of what you think, whether good money or not, would say talent-wise, that's the type of forward Arsenal need to be after. That's the type of forward that sends a message. So as far as I'm concerned, that's why it's the best of A.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a pretty good case here. Speaking of squinting to see the talent, do you need to squint to see the talent with Rafael Leao?
Um, you don't need to squint to see the talent, but you need to squint so that the talent can be seen. Um,
Okay.
and uh, he, he he's very talented, very talented. You need to play for him. Are we saying that he has the freedom of the left hand side, and we're going to change our entire pressing structure, which is the major non-negotiable for us? I think I look at Leao as possibly one of the biggest penny stock, uh, either crashes or hits that you have
Mhm.
seen. You want to change that mentality, and if you can tell me that's a world class player that could potentially challenge for a Ballon d'Or, it's level of talent. Or are we talking that we're recruiting Ben Arfa in the team? And for as crazy of a talent as we buy, the are we convinced that we're getting the 75 million pound, 200K a week forward that we do need? I don't know, mate. I don't know. Um I struggle the most with this player than I have pretty much any evaluation, because everything in my head as a scout goes the talent is A. Everything that I've seen from even his application now says he's a B, because I don't see it. And so I'm going to back my chat. I'm going to put him in B personally. I can't, if I was a betting man and I said gun to your head, is Rafael Leao going to perform at an 8 out of 10 minimum every single game, which he needs to be, by the way, for 75 million pounds? Can every fan on the planet put their house on that? I personally can't.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? With Liao, I mean obviously there's when he's on it, he's a force of nature, right? Um, and I think he really can be the full package, right? He's got the physique, he's got the pace, he's got the ability on the ball, but I don't know. I don't like to jump inside the heads of players
Me
and
neither.
people I've never met, but like something seems broken. You know what I mean? Like
You know what it
just
is, mate? Like you can't. I'm with you. I hate doing character analysis, but what I see is a player that even this year in a really poor Milan team has looked heavy.
yeah.
Uh, and I don't see the same layout. And that could be, look, we've seen what Dembele has done in his career, and that's brilliant. Like players are we're humans. Anything can happen, and if this is football, anything can happen. Uh, I just don't know if Arsenal are at a stage to bet. Look, you know what? Actually, I think I'm being harsh. Like the talent is that crazy good. You don't need to squint to see the talent. It is complete a mental game, and it's this. I would be willing to put him in A, but I'd have to put him last because I can't guarantee to you that that mental capacity is there. But talent-wise, in the right system, I have to be consistent. He is world class. Even if you said that the mentality wasn't good, and you said, okay, Leao, you're going to be the last man on the shoulder, and we're going to run for you. Will Leao make the difference in the biggest of games? He will. He will.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's worth changing our entire identity for, and I wouldn't like it. So I'll keep him last of the A in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a window where you have to avoid risk as much as possible, especially with your biggest signings. And
Yeah.
Liao, I don't think he's as risky as like a Gyökeres, but I mean, there's still a lot of risk there that just kind of makes you want to consider other options.
Mhm.
Speaking of risk or lack thereof, I want to pull in Ollie Watkins here because he's been viewed as kind of the middle ground, shall we say, between Sheshko and Gyökeres. So, I mean, what do you make of Watkins? What do you think he can
I love
bring
him.
to? You love him?
I love him. I think that you're looking at somebody that has consistently proven to be a top three Golden Boot contender in the league for the last 3 years, guaranteed.
Hmm.
And I think that you're looking at a person who is an Arsenal fan at the age of 30. For everyone saying that they're debating the physical drop off, he's a fan of the club, and this is one of the most professional players who, by the way, got into football late. This whole thing about worrying about the age, we didn't put miles on Ollie Watkins until he was 26, 27. His rise throughout the football pyramid was not traditional. He didn't start in a heavy academy to begin with. He didn't have those miles on his legs. I look at this as a win now forward for a price point that can let me go and buy something else like a Barcola and a Cement can open up a third thing whilst guaranteeing, by the way, third Golden Boot output. Like I need to reemphasize because people just think that Ollie Watkins is decent. Look up his output. He's consistently been that. And the only reason that we didn't see that this past season is because for some reason Unai Emery felt that after he was late, he decided to put him on the bench, which was crazy. He solves so much, and I think that this was one of the things that I probably was the most. I've been in group chats with you. I kept quoting 15 million pounds. I believe that
You
Ollie Watkins gets bought,
you
mate.
saw the
We
tantrum
will
that
go
I
as
threw in January.
put him in A. Put him in A. And ahead of Alvarez even. I yeah, that's I think he would be a crazy good signing. A signing that most fans, casuals would hate, and I'd be screaming with joy and saying, "Wow, that's a great value."
I just I get that it's not sexy compared to Watkins or Gyökeres, but I don't think it would be consistent for me to turn my nose up at a walk-in signing when in January, I was saying to you and a lot of other people, this guy could come in and change our season. And
Hmm.
so I don't think that suddenly changes in a few months, especially you know given the things that you've mentioned in terms of the wear and tear that a lot of people think he has that isn't actually there based on how his journey has happened.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you.
Okay. Few more. We can do this as a little bit more of a lightning round. I know that we're over the hour mark here. So Antoine Semenyo, winger
I love
extraordinaire
him.
from Bournemouth.
Yeah, I love him, mate. I love him. I think uh, uh, such a symmetry of role. I think in terms of what he would offer us, and again, the definition of not sexy, but would bang in the right system. Again, yeah, people are going to be surprised. I'd put him A. I'd put him right between Alvarez and Leao for me, where all these other guys I think have better talent than Semenyo at its core, but Semenyo works perfectly with our system, and he would absolutely bang for me without having to change much.
Yeah, and Arsenal fan, which I do think is just that
Mhm.
little bit more
At
effort, a
its
little bit
cost.
more, yeah. All right, Anthony Gordon, who we've actually been linked to a fair bit more than I expected.
Yeah, I put him ahead of Sesko, but still in a B level talent. Um, I think he's very talented. I would not be upset, but like I'd have to understand. I could understand Gordon, Watkins, and Wemo. Like if it lets
Mhm.
you do that level of investment, I can understand it. I think he is a better version of Martinelli. And by the way, I do think he could be a Heung-min Sung level talent in his growth. He's very
Mhm.
young. He's 24, but he's incredibly raw. He is, but he'd have really good symmetry in terms of the out of possession work, the hard yards running, and he does have some really brilliant ball striking ability. So I think as a talent, he just has more to work on than the other ones. The other ones I can see a lot more bang for your buck than what you it would take. Like the Newcastle fee is kind of crazy. Um, but yeah, I would put him B. You know what? Actually, you know what? OCD. Switch him with Sesko because I do think that Sesko fits our system just a bit more, and like the fee for Gordon doesn't make sense to me as much. Like that would be a 75 million pound signing.
Yeah, I like Gordon in terms of the talent, but yeah, I don't think the value is there for a player who I don't think would be that much of an upgrade over Gabriel
Yeah,
Martinelli. I think he is a little better than Martinelli, but I just don't think it justifies the value. Um, okay, Brian Mbumu, who could still become a teammate of Gordon's, although he really seems to want to go to Manchester United currently. But where do you have Mbumo?
put him between Watkins and Alvarez. He's that good of a player. Um, I don't know if we need it. It
Mhm.
would change things. It would have Saka come inside, but I love him. This is a 20 goal and assist player who is a top player, best forwards in the league. And as far as transition control and his finishing in the box, it's incredible. So like, yeah, he would be incredible. I don't know if I'm like yelling at the club for not doing it, because we've got obviously Bukayo Saka, but talent wise, you can't argue Mbeumo's top.
Yeah, um, I love Mbumo the talent. Obviously, had an excellent season for Brentford. Not my number one choice on this tier list in terms of players who I want to come in and back up Saka. But we'll get to that in a second. I want to knock a couple out before we get to him. Um, Jamie Gittins. I almost didn't put him on the list. I don't think this is a really relevant player, but I just kind of want to get your sense in terms of how he stacks up against the rest of these guys.
Yeah, definite B talent and put him last in the Bs because he's the most raw, absolutely, but definitely clear potential to be an A type talent easily for me when he's grown out. But
Yeah.
he's crazy raw, crazy raw.
Honestly, he's the perfect Chelsea player, and that seems to be the team that
Perfect.
he's about to go to. Um, just player who could have an amazing ceiling but hasn't really shown it yet. Um, and if all else fails, will fetch them a pretty penny. Okay,
Hmm.
the last two are really interesting to me. And I want to start with Morgan Rogers because Morgan Rogers isn't actually a forward, but he has been linked to us. And maybe I'm not seeing it right in terms of his fit in midfield. But this strikes me as more of a guy who would come in and contribute to us um, in and around the forward line. But maybe my read on that is wrong. Where would you put Rogers? And do you think he would come in as maybe like a left wing option, or is this a guy that we're putting in midfield?
I'd love for you to think of Grealish at Villa and how they platformed him, and he needs an overlapping left back. But look at the impact that that could have.
Mm-hmm.
He's a true like. I would really worry for Martin Odegaard. Like, where is he going? Like, this is a true 10, a carrying
Yeah.
10. Everything that we complain that Martin Odegaard isn't is Morgan Rogers. And he's really talented, mate. I don't know what his output is, but I swear he got over 15 goals and assists this season. Like, he's the only one that I could justifiably see compete with Miles Lewis Kelly for the PFA Young Player of the Year. And he had a phenomenal season. And I think he does have an unstoppable quality in carrying a midfield. It is like it is incredible. And yeah, if used correctly, I think I could see it being world class. I don't think it's world class on its own,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think it's a talent. If you were to fit in, you could see some really serious moves that he could do. I think he's a brilliant player. I'm being around the bush though because like I just don't love him for us right now
Mm-hmm.
personally, and I think like if you're going to get, I would be so pissed that we didn't get Florian Wirtz. If you're looking for a midfielder that you wanted as a pocket player with really really high output, then you compete with Florian Wirtz. If that's what you wanted, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted that, if you wanted Desiree Douay, if you wanted that type of wing 10, then you should have gone out for it. And that's the only way that I can see Morgan Rogers fitting in this team right now. And in that way, I think it's poor. But I do think like if you were to Grealish him at Aston Villa with a Lucas Digne with an overlapping left back and give him freedom to pick up and run in that left half space, he could wreak havoc and he could play for a big team. And I think he could translate his output. I don't think it's just because it's Aston Villa that we see spaces and that's why he's doing it. I think he's a true game breaker. He is. I just don't know if I want the team to go in that way. So I would put him just behind Julian Alvarez and between Semenyo, personally, in terms of talent. I think
Okay.
he's very talented, but you would have to change for him. I don't like that change and what that looks like. But he is more talented than Semenyo, and there's less questions to it. The only reason I don't put him ahead of Alvarez is I think that Alvarez has more goals in him. Even though, but him and Alvarez are both examples of players that you would really have to change the team for. I don't like that, but it's
Yeah.
undoubted that they have talent.
And if you were to factor in like the fit for Rogers at Arsenal, would that change what tier you have him in, or like what order this is in?
Well, I have to be fair because then I have to do the same with Alvarez. Like, I think you have to
Yeah.
change a ton of Alvarez, but the talent is like, that's a 20 goal and assist forward if you platform it well. If you've got Rogers, this is a 15 goal and assist midfielder that gets it from midfield. Like that's 75 million pounds. Like, that's really really good. I want that for Arsenal? No, I'll always caveat that. But yeah, I think as a talent, for example, go to Chelsea, who are developing. That's a team that I think he would thrive in. And like in the same way with Giddens, like we don't need that right now. But in 2 years, I'm telling you, I feel that Morgan Rogers will be talking about him as one of the better attacking midfielders in the league in 2 years, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Really immensely talented player. If we got him, I wouldn't be upset about it. But yeah, there's a lot to
Yeah.
consider with him. Okay, last player, and that
Mhm.
is Noni Madueke. Was linked
Yeah.
to us today as someone that we're potentially interested in. So um,
How do you feel on that?
on Madueke,
Yeah.
here's the thing, right? And I mentioned this to you earlier. I have a feeling, a suspicion that we're actually after three forwards, right? Because
I have been saying this, man.
we've been just the kind of the players that we've been linked to, right? You have these links to guys like Barcola and Rodrigo and Julian Alvarez, and these are like your super expensive, elite level players, guys who really take the project up a notch, right? And then obviously we're after a center forward, as evidenced by the continuing links to Sheshko and Gyökeres and even Watkins at times. And then I feel like there's this other group of players, and a lot of them aren't even on this list, right? But there's this other group of players, like Semenyo, like Bakayoko, like Sane, who we've been linked to, and maybe Semenyo is kind of between the two groups of wingers here, but we've been linked to a handful of wingers who you don't love if like they're the left wing signing, right? And I just with all the noise that the team has made about wanting to really kick things up a notch in that position, these players strike me as a nice to have signing, like
For
someone
sure.
else who comes in and just rotates primarily with Saka, but like they could also probably contribute on the left hand side as well. And just guys who really come in and fill out the numbers and give us just one more option off the bench if we really need it.
So I think I look at B as talented enough to jump levels, and I look
Mhm.
at Nani Madueke, and I don't think I ever see a world-class player, but I see a very good player. Like,
Yeah.
I see a Kanu, potentially. Not the starting project number 9 striker, but a striker that can come off the bench and make impact. Like, he's a very important squad piece to a big team. So I'd put him at C, personally, and I look at C as, like, again, it's not something that I'd be upset with, but all these other guys above him have more talent, undoubtedly, for me. But for
Yeah.
the right price, I'm like, if we've done our business and you're saying that you're also getting Madueke, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to say, okay, sure, like he definitely can provide, you know, output for Bakayo. I think on your point, mate, like the one thing is because I've got a pelters online for my 3 forward take. I've been somebody that has been very vocal about that, about thinking that, and people thinking I'm crazy. I feel like, not pretentiously, but I feel I see a unique profile in 3 of these things, and I just wanted to touch on this.
Sure.
We're talking about 3 forwards. I think it's simply this: we want a reference center forward that we can go to and receive off of a press. Let's call it. That's why you're looking at Sesko, Ollie Watkins, Morgan Rogers, Semenyo. Very different in how they do it, but this is a reference center forward that you can go long to and is an outlet that can get you out of trouble. But it's a reference center forward. Then you have your second strikery winger, a winger that is a little bit more of the poppy inside pocket player that has brilliant ball striking with high output. That's boom, your Rodrigos, your Alvarez, right? Those are very, very clear. The Jesus replacement ahead of time. Then you have the true isolation 1v1 winger. Your Barcolas, your Giddens, your Nico Williams, your Leaus. Those are, in my opinion, the 3 types of forwards that we're after. And so you just have to build, in my opinion, those profile combos. So if we get Rodrigo and Sesko, that means we need a touchline option that can complement that can play both sides. If you got a Barcola and a Sesko, that means that you're going to have to be after a second strikery profile. That's the
Yeah.
one that's missing. And that's why, by the way, even a player like a Karetsis, the Greek kid, makes sense if you got a touchline option in Barcola, Nico Williams, Leao. He's more of a guy that can come on the inside and is brilliant. Now I think it's a little bit of overkill, by the way, with the youth that we have. But I'm just trying to say, like, again, in Buemo, that's why I've always said, if let me put it to you this way: my favorite win now selection. Okay, I have
Mhm.
said since February, people looked at my dream, and it was Barcola and Buemo Watkins. And to me, I looked at it and I thought, okay, I'll need a prospect center forward, but Watkins is going to be available for what, 40 million pounds now? 45?
Probably.
Not going to be crazy. When you're talking about the third forward, mate, like Semenya, when you were talking about Madueke, do you not say that that's going to be 45 million pounds? Probably, like at
Yeah.
minimum. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, if 45 million pounds is getting me a third Golden Boot winner, 100% I'm putting my eggs in that basket. That's a win now. I know what I'm getting, Ollie Watkins. If the third forward is the cheapest one, then get the most win now option. And that's my justification for my window. I think Barcola would be an elite touchline winner, one of the best in the world. That's where most of your funds go. And then, yeah, I really would prioritize Mbeumo. I think that would be crazy, crazy depth because I look at that and I look at those collection of players where I think Mbeumo is about 65 million pounds, which is the price of Sesko. I look at Barcola and he would be about the price of Rodrigo. And then I look at Ollie Watkins, who's about 45 million pounds and would be the price of your third attacker.
Yeah.
So the linked window is Sesko, Rodrigo, and one. George's window, personally, for the same amount of money, would be Barcola and Mbeumo Watkins for a win now collection of forwards that I think changes our front line entirely and strikes fear. If we rocked up with those three in the forward line, I think people look at Arsenal very differently.
I think it would be serious. I think it would be a really, really serious set of acquisitions. And this tier list actually makes me feel a lot more encouraged as we go through the window, right? Because just look at that A tier, right? There's a lot of great players out there. I just think I think creativity this summer will be greatly rewarded, right? And like you said, like if we, if we're not convinced by Gyökeres and Šeško is just a little too much money for us, right? There is a bit of that I disagree with. If we do take that decision, but if we were to turn down the opportunity to sign Šeško, and then we went and got Watkins and we got a Barcola, and then we got maybe Mbeumo's off the table, but we got someone else, right, who also is near or at that level of talent and being able to contribute. I think that's a damn good window. I think that's a window that gets you a trophy somewhere.
I was even talking about it in our group chat a bit. Like I was trying to find the third forward for the linked window because everybody hates when I put my window because they're like, I haven't seen links to it. And I'm like, guys, it's like my window. It's what I subjectively would want. I haven't talked about the feasibility. Can we just ignore that, please?
Yeah.
But let's do the linked one. Like it seems like Sesko and Rodrigo's plan A. Look, if we're wrong, fine. But like, guys, everyone wants to be nitpicky in these things. Those are the most linked. Can we at least agree on those, right?
We're just going off what the journals are saying. Yeah.
Yes. If that's the case, then I do feel that Semenyo is your best complement to it. But I think Adeyemi is another option that people haven't talked about. That is probably one of the better touchline options that are versatile. That would be brilliant as a complement to that window. The only thing that I would say is the Adeyemi forward line is a little light. Rodrigo, Adeyemi, and a Sesko who's 6'5" that doesn't know it yet can be pushed around a little bit. Which is why I like the power of a Semenyo who can be touchline either option, left or right wing. But more expensive. Like Adeyemi would be around 45 million pounds, and like Semenyo, we gotta go up because I mean, Dean Huijsen got stripped from Bournemouth. Zabarny is, I think, I don't know. I don't think he's been completed at PSG, but they're certainly pushing. And I do think Bournemouth are going to get to a point where you can't sell more than 3 players. It's going to be the Monaco of 2017, and they're going to say, "Screw you." And
not to mention Kirkes as well. Going out the door.
Kirkes as well. So like they can't strip everybody, and they lost Kepa. I know, I know we're like, but I'm serious. He was a very good player for that last year, and they need to get a new goalkeeper. I don't worry about Bournemouth. For God's sake, they've got John Lucini lined up as like a replacement. Who's crazy good. Like Bournemouth are incredible. I could do another podcast with you about it, what I think about that recruitment team. But I'm just saying, logically, every team in world football that has been stripped, like the Monaco 2017, has had a limit that when 3 players were sold, the 4th one was F you, respectfully, kind of vibes. It was Thomas Lemar. After Mendy, Silva got taken out, and Bakayoko got left. Was Lamar ever leaving that window? He was never leaving. And I just feel a similar way that Bournemouth will be. Like, Dean's gone, Kepa's gone, Kirkaz is likely gone, Zabarni is being looked to be moved on. You think
Yeah.
5 players are going to leave Bournemouth like that and they're going to be okay with it? I don't know. It surprised me. I could be wrong, but that's why I worry about the Semenyo thing. And I think if that's your choice, move. If it's not your choice, then let's build. But the one thing I did want to end on, mate, is I'm very optimistic about the type of window, and I can see many different types of windows be successful for
Yeah.
Arsenal. And I don't mean that. I actually mean that as a way to put pressure on Arsenal, not as a way to defend them, but to put pressure. Because this idea that there's one window that will solve it for good, completely disagree with. And I think that the fact that we just did an entire tier list and there was one S tier talent says it all to me. Don't be particular about the type of window that you're going to be faced as an Arsenal fan. Let's be fair. There factually is no S tier talents bar Isak. And I'm not having another. That's the only non-negotiable talent that every single player in the world will say, yes, he's world class.
And
Yes,
even
he's the
he
best
has
in his
his warts.
position. He does. The injury record, it's like you're having a look at that type of talent and you're saying, is it worth dummying your budget? Because it's not Florian Wirtz, it's 150, maybe not 150, but it's 140, 130 million pounds of an investment, right? This is a guy with 3 years left on his contract. So by the way, I just think Newcastle will say, no, you're not going. Even if somebody meets it and is crazy, they're just like, no,
Yeah.
you're contracted.
But before and I know you got to take off in a second, but before we get out of here, can you just I just need someone to tell me Liverpool are not going to sign Alexander Isak.
Happily, they will
Yeah.
not sign Alexander Isak. When has there been? By the way, what kills me is people suddenly are acting like Liverpool have always been historically big spenders. We're talking about a team that's historically been stingier than us.
Yeah.
And they're going big because they didn't spend a single damn dime last year. Fine, fair play. But are people not adding up 30 million pounds for Frimpong, 45 million pounds for Kirkaz that they've already agreed with, 113 for Florian Wirtz? Are you telling me that then to get Isak, they're not going to recruit an anchor? They're going to have Gravenberch be the only holding midfielder with 2 flying fullbacks, and Florian Wirtz, who by the way does struggle running back to goal. Like, mate, they need another
And
anchor, and yeah,
and
they're now selling.
even
They're buying Gahey now to replace an
yeah.
outgoing Kwanzaa for 55 million. Like, mate, start doing the freaking math. Yes, it's a lot of money, but are you telling me that they're going to spend 400 million pounds in one window? Has any team done that? The fears are unfounded.
Even if they get 40 million for Kwanzaa, which looks like it's going to happen, and even if they get like 80 million for Darwin, yes, that's a big windfall in terms of sales.
Sure.
But I'm almost inclined to believe that that's more aimed at alleviating the spending in this window, right? And not really like
But why does that
opening.
impact Newcastle saying, sure, you can go? This is where I don't
Yeah,
understand. You can
yeah,
build all the net spend calculations that you believe that Liverpool get the space for, no problem. My question has never been whether or not they can make funds or money. Arsenal, I can sell a bunch of different windows on my Excel file and show you how I can make more money. If the player doesn't want to leave or rather if the club doesn't want you to leave, you're not going. And Newcastle, I promise you, mate, I promise you, are not destroying their public image. They have finally got into the Champions League. Their Saudi owners have done this hugely. They are giving Alexander Isak the gold treatment. And if he
yeah.
refuses and he makes that much of a stink, they are saying, I'll give you a release clause, or I'm not letting you go. And I'll take the risk and I'll jump to next year because you are that important to my reputation. And in the meantime, I'm going to be buying all the way around you because I know you'll leave and you'll want to leave. But I'm going to make that 3 years, 2 years, and then I'll look to sell you next year.
Yeah.
it is the worst narrative thing that Newcastle can do to sell Alexander Isak. Bruno won't get that response, by the way. No other player in that 11. Gordon won't. You can replace a Gordon. You can replace a Bruno Guimaraes. You cannot replace an Alexander Isak. And to me, you're not making that decision from a period of weakness when you just got into the Champions League for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I certainly do feel better now. So thank you for that. And thank you for, we're closing in on like an hour and a half now. So thank you for coming in on and just chatting, Arsenal news and doing the tier list with me. I really appreciate you giving me your time, George.
Always. It's always a pleasure anytime.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk about I feel like I could easily go like another 3 or 4 hours just chatting with you. But we have lives we have to get back to. One of these days, either I'll end up in your neck of the woods or you'll end up in mine. We'll grab a drink and we'll keep chatting.
Absolutely.
You guys can follow George at GeorgeV_AFC. You can catch him on the Canon podcast. You guys are really putting out some great stuff, by the way. Doing amazing work. So, if you haven't kept up with the Canon podcast, please do. And you can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale if you want. I mean, and I'm on Bluesky at Shamsdale at BSky Social. You can find the pod at old pod, Not That Gooner, at Not That Gooner on Twitter and at notthatgooner.bsky social on Bluesky. You can follow us at Not That Kind of Gooner on Instagram. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you are watching or listening to this, I hope you watched it because we did a whole tier list thing. So, but if you just listen to it, that's fine too. Either way, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do give us a 5-star review. Really does help out and kind of get the pod in front of more people. So we will be back on Saturday. And George, I hope you'll be back soon on the pod. We'd love to have you back on. Yeah. And myself and probably Drew, maybe John, will be back on Saturday to chat some more news. And Drew has a rant about the U.S. men's national team that he wants to do. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for being here with us. And until then, take care and bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you!
To go! Here's the batsman against Santi Cazorla! Oh, Saka! That is a goal! Guarnieri